Hello there and a very warm welcome to Channels Beam. I am Victor Matthias. The aptitude test conducted by a third party for recruitment into the Nigerian Immigration Service betrayed the high rates of unemployment inherent in Nigeria. Nigerian youths spilled out in unprecedented numbers for what may be termed the biggest recruitment exercise in recent history. Though President Goodluck Jonathan, during his New Year address, noted that our national budget for 2014, which was then before the National Assembly, is specifically targeted at the creation and inclusive growth. What transpired during that exercise has brought to the fore how unemployed and underemployed Nigerian youths are 3 months into 2014. On the program today, we will take a look at the NIS recruitment scandal and unemployment in the country. Joining me is Ifedibo Nze Silva and a host of others from around the world. Just before we kickstart the conversation, let's look at some other trending topics in the social cyberspace. 1,000 games a slave. Arsenal slumped to a 6-0 defeat at hands of London rivals Chelsea on the 1,000th game in charge by coach Arsene Wenger. This is coming weeks after being labelled a specialist in failure by Chelsea manager Jose Mourinho. First tweet. Twitter celebrated the 8th anniversary of the first Twitter message ever, and users got the opportunity to relive their very first tweets by visiting a website created for that purpose alone. Interesting innovation by Twitter. Our online contributors are, however, waiting and ready to go. Let's meet them.
I think, first of all, we need to, as a country and as a people, to own up to things, first of all, because the NIS tragedy just shows us the extent of unemployment in Nigeria, where you have about 4,000 jobs vacancies and over 700,000 people applied for it. So I think it's best that the president and the presidency come to a point where they try to start to own up to the actual reality and situation of the country. If you say you provided 1.5 million jobs, what happened last week doesn't really reflect that. First of all, we need to own up to the reality of the problems and then start to deal with this situation, because if we go on propaganda doesn't really deal with situation. You cannot govern by propaganda, and it's evident that what they've been doing so far is just totally propaganda. And we can see from the reality of what happened last Saturday, where people actually died from stampede looking for a job. It's evident that the situation, the unemployment situation in Nigeria is actually as epileptic or more epileptic than we actually thought it was. It's best they own up to the situation and start to look at it squarely and fairly and really get that into the business on providing employment for the Nigerian youth. Because from what we saw last Saturday, if it continues, if the situation is not arrested immediately and aggressively, what will happen is in a few years' time, we really do not want to start to envisage what's going to happen when these youths do not get jobs and when they are just out there in the streets. And we know when people are not employed, then the idle mind is the devil's workshop.
I think it's a bit funny, the president talking about 1.5 million jobs, when in reality he has not told us what the demography is of how many people are truly unemployed. And if you tell me you have 1.5 million jobs in the midst of about 70, 80 million unemployed people, I mean, you've not scratched the surface. And unemployment is not the only problem. I keep saying, of course, you also have the problem of unemployment. I mean, somebody said he saw his primary school teacher amongst the people that went for that testing. I mean, that's to show you that people have jobs that are not satisfied with, and they want something else to do apart from what they're doing right now. So the problem is on both fronts. But going back to your question, I think the issue is the government is not doing enough to stimulate private sector participation in job creation. There's no deliberate policy on SMEs, small businesses to take a lot of unemployed people off the streets. The bank's rates, I mean, are atrocious. I mean, how much business can you do in this country as of now that you make profits of within 30 to 40%, and the bank wants me to pay over 30% interest? I mean, those are the things I want the government to be talking about. We're not talking about that they are pumping money into the economy to create jobs, and we don't know where this money is synced to. I need policies that will encourage 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds to set up small businesses, take themselves out of the unemployment market, and we start from there. We're seeing it done all over the world. We can't play the ostrich and just want to create our own solutions outside what has worked in other tribes. I think that is what our government needs to start talking about and thinking about, and not just come up with bogus figures that really have no basis.
I believe that all in all, the government is not addressing this entire issue well at all. I believe we should go to the source of the problem, to the root of the problem, which is what? I believe that if these people were well trained enough, properly trained, to the extent that these people create jobs themselves. You don't need to wait for the government to give you jobs. You go out there and create jobs. You start looking at countries poaching, talents from the country. That is what we want to see. We want the government to invest in education, the same way they invest in sports, like in hiring foreign coaches for the national team and things like that. Hire well-qualified, up-to-date professionals in the educational field, in the various government institutions, to teach these students, these kids growing up, teach them what they need to know in order to be effective in the job market. Not just come out and then you end up pumping thousands of applicants out there. Well, like for instance, I've heard of many situations whereby candidates are computer science graduates, but they've never seen a computer before. They've been taught programming languages that were used in the 80s and things like that. How do you expect such people to come out and then be able to contribute to the workforce? People have to groom these people before they can be productive. And that is why people don't want to employ many of these people, because they know that they have to invest so much in learning them, and then it's just a vicious cycle on the long run, because you see job adverts asking for many years of experience when you've never even given the candidate an opportunity to gain any experience in the first place.
As known about Shoki program, I think you have raised some good points about creating, about education, Then the key thing that education, infrastructure, and finance, those are the things that create jobs in the economy, How easy is it for entrepreneurs to access finances? You can do whatsoever you want to do. I mean, even if we rewrite or we rethink our national education policy, focusing towards empowering youth to be self-independent, we still need to look at the issue of finance, because it's only in Nigeria where, entrepreneurs can lend money from banks where they charge them up to 23% as interest. And government need to provide financial mechanism, not just Shoki program, because that, to me, that sounds like an incubation program, that where people present their own idea, to the government. But the government need to create a mechanism within the economy that will make entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, have easy access to finance at affordable rates, probably maybe 1% interest or 2%, like the way we have up here in developed world. So it's not only enough, because you just train people, or you provide the infrastructure. Finance is another thing.
Especially with this government, what they're used to is you have a problem, and then you create another problem to deal with the problem you have, and in essence, you create another problem. And it's when you used to firefighting rather than looking at the situation, looking at the root cause and deal with the problem. He created, or the president said he was going to give him 3 jobs for the families of those that died during the stampede. And there are some questions I need to ask. What if that family member is the only one that has the competence, the character, and qualification to work for the immigration service? What if there is no other person in that family, that immediate family, to work for the immigration service? Are we just going to say, okay, we're going to employ people just because the brother or the sister died, and then we're just going to employ them into the immigration service? What if they're not qualified enough to work for the immigration service? Are we putting people that are inept into positions that require competence? Again, we're just going to repeat this whole process. It is, if giving jobs to 20 people, of what people 20 families, 20 people from families, then what happens to the other millions of Nigerians that do not have job or are still unemployed. It's a process that it's just an effort in futility, I would say, because there are still millions of people that still do not have jobs. And if you give these people job, it's then you've left the immigration controller general of the immigration service, and you've left the interior minister. What the president should have done, this act that they did last Saturday, is gross misconduct. It is the height of insensitivity, it's the height of irresponsibility. That the only thing that it requires is a sack.
I think the recent stampede that happened all across Nigeria offers Nigerians a very good opportunity to look at Nigeria again and understand what's really going on in that country. We have a country of 170 million people who don't have jobs, no manufacturing base, no economic base. All our needs are produced in European countries. All the infrastructure that we need are supplied by others. So we are economically weak and helpless, let's be honest about it. So you find that in a situation where we're not producing anything, we're totally dependent on outsiders. We have no jobs. That is the reality of 170 million Nigerians. Not only do they not have jobs, they have no hopes of getting jobs, because the economic base of Nigeria is externally driven, is externally supplied. Nigerians are just like tenants living in a home. The home was built by someone else, it's supplied by someone else, and you're just living there. That is our condition as oppressed people in Nigeria. And as I say, this incident that happened offers us Nigerians a very good opportunity to look at the situation again, to look at our condition and understand how come we have arrived in this condition and what we need to do to change our condition. Because it's not going to change until Nigerians actually do something about the situation. The PDP isn't going to change it. APC is not going to change it. It is down to the ordinary Nigerian, the man in Ajegunle, in Kano, in Lagos, in Calabar, to get up and understand what is going on to us in our lives. This isn't happening to someone else, it's happening to us as Nigerians.